All right, we're going to get started. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here. My name is Syed Hassan, that's spelled S-Y-E-D, last name H-U-S-S-A-N, and I am with the Migrant Rights Network Secretariat. Today, you'll hear from half a dozen undocumented migrants from Alberta, British Columbia, Ontario, and Quebec, who will courageously share their experiences of exploitation and injustice that they face as a result of being denied permanent residency. Each of them will make a brief statement to start. After all the statements, we will take the questions from journalists. Please place your question in the Q&A function in Zoom with your name and organization, and we'll unmute you for you to ask your questions at the end. As people need to return to work, and as this is a very time-constrained event, we will be ending within the hour. So that means 9 a.m. Vancouver, 10 a.m. Calgary and Edmonton, and 12 p.m. Eastern sharp. So why are we here? Today, we're releasing numbers received from Immigration, Refugee, and Citizenship Canada that cause grave concern. Until 2019, the acceptance rates for humanitarian and compassionate applications in Canada averaged 64%. But in 2020, that number decreased to 42%. And in the first quarter of 2021, it fell even further to 30%. That means humanitarian and compassionate rejections have doubled in Canada between 2019 and the first quarter of this year. This massive jump in rejections and this equivalently lowering of acceptance rates is even more concerning because it has not been accompanied by any public change in policy or an announcement. In fact, the opposite is true. Throughout 2020 and 2021, Prime Minister Trudeau's government has repeatedly promised that Canada would extend permanent resident status to migrants already in the country. The federal government has even opened several short-term and piecemeal and extremely exclusionary programs to give migrants in the country permanent resident status. And the government has promised to set a target of 401,000 new permanent resident immigrants this year. And yet, with these historic rejection rates that we are releasing today in the humanitarian compassionate application, the federal government is condemning those migrants already here and working and living in the most precarious situations to further insecurity and deportation. The humanitarian compassionate application is the only way for most undocumented migrants to access permanent residency, and yet it is a difficult, expensive, and time-consuming process. While there are over 500,000 undocumented migrants in the country, many of them who had previously been on study permits, work permits, and refugee permits, which were not extended by federal lawmakers and policymakers, only about 10,000 are able to gather the resources to apply each year. An HNC application is the only opportunity for over 500,000 residents to have a shot at getting basic labor rights, healthcare, and access to social supports that permanent resident status provides. By doubling rejections, Prime Minister Trudeau is doubling the potential for exploitation. While government spokespeople may insist that the humanitarian and compassionate applications are individual applications, where the decisions are being made by an individual officer, the reality is that there is a clear systematic pattern of rejection over the last 2 years that we are revealing today. And the rejections are specifically of racialized, low-waged migrants. The humanitarian compassionate application system is broken. It's expensive, it's difficult to navigate, the rejection rate is high, and as we are showing today, it can easily and arbitrarily be changed without oversight or accountability. Permanent resident status is about access to equal rights and protections. It is not a gift or a privilege. It is the only existing mechanism for migrants to access the same rights as other residents of the country. Today, over 1.6 million people in Canada are excluded from this equality in various ways through their immigration status, with the greatest exploitation faced by those that are low income, racialized, and undocumented. All levels of government have publicly acknowledged the relationship between permanent residency, equal rights, and safety. The most recently created new programs, the TR2PR program and the healthcare worker program, both exclude most undocumented residents. We need comprehensive, not piecemeal change. That is to ensure full and permanent immigration status for all migrants, including undocumented people in the country. And to avoid facing the same crisis in the future, ensure that all our residents that arrive in the future do so with permanent resident status. This is not unrealistic. The federal government created a regularization program for undocumented construction workers a few years ago. While that program has struggled to launch, has high numbers of exclusions, and is only limited to 500 people in the Toronto area, it shows that regularization programs to grant permanent residence are both possible and pragmatic. And as the speakers today will outline, a comprehensive regularization is also necessary because without it, migrants face immense exploitation. Lives and livelihoods are at risk. Next, I'm going to introduce each speaker one at a time who will be, and we will be sharing the names of all the speakers as well as our press release in the chat right now. So the first speaker is Mamadou Bacheli. He's 44 years old, a father of two, who suffered a work injury in 2018. He made a humanitarian compassionate application, but was denied in January of 2021. Mamadou will be speaking in French, and there will be a live transcription. Mamadou.
Allô, bonjour. Bonjour tout le monde. Vous m'entendez? Allô?
Yes, please go ahead.
OK. Si je comprends bien, il veut que je parle de mon histoire ou bien je ne comprends pas. Je n'ai pas compris.
Mamadou, c'est le moment de lire la déclaration.
OK. Bon, je me nomme Mamadou Bacheli, j'ai 44 ans, marié, père de 2 enfants qui sont actuellement dans mon pays, le Mali. Je suis arrivé au Canada depuis juin 2015 en tant que demandeur d'asile. Malheureusement, mai en 2018, j'ai eu un grave accident dans mon lieu de travail, d'où mes 2 jambes ont été écrasées par une machine de production, c'est-à-dire que les 2 tibias ainsi que les 2 péronées. Aujourd'hui, je n'arrive plus à marcher comme d'avant, car je porte des séquelles permanentes importantes de 43%, selon l'expertise médicale du Québec. J'ai fait une longue hospitalisation de 8 mois, étant couché à l'hôpital. J'ai fait 3 hôpitaux, à savoir l'hôpital Sacré-Cœur, l'hôpital Jean Talon et l'hôpital Marie-Clarac. C'est en 2019 que j'ai fait ma demande humanitaire. Malheureusement, elle a été refusée. C'est-à-dire que 2 ans après, en janvier 2021, 2 ans d'attente en précarité, alors qu'il y a un suspicion sur les déportations vers le Mali, mon pays. Donc, je suis coincé dans la précarité. On m'a refusé la demande, on m'a refusé ma résidence permanente parce que j'ai déposé une demande humanitaire malgré mon intégration, malgré les lettres de soutien de toutes les équipes médicales, malgré les lettres de soutien des amis, malgré les lettres de soutien des organismes. J'ai été complètement affaibli par ce processus douloureux. Je vois maintenant que le Canada n'accorde aucune valeur à la vie humaine. C'est mon cas. Mon cas montre que l'injustice auquel sont confrontés tous les migrants au Canada et en particulier ceux qui sont blessés en travaillant dans ce pays. Moi, c'est sur quoi, hein? Après ceci, le refus de ma résidence permanente m'a complètement bouleversé dans la tête, m'a complètement anéanti. C'est pour cela que je suis des traitements en psychologique pour pouvoir surmonter ces épreuves dues à l'accident, dues au refus de ma demande humanitaire. Ma femme et mes enfants aussi sont bouleversés par mon accident. Et puis encore, avec ce refus de ma demande humanitaire, c'est encore pire. Les enfants ne font que me réclamer à tout moment, car ils veulent être à côté de moi. Je n'ai pas vu ma famille depuis 6 ans. Quant à ma femme, elle n'arrive pas à sécher les larmes à chaque fois que nous nous rencontrons au téléphone. La douleur est forte. Selon elle, elle n'arrive plus même à dormir, elle n'arrive plus même à fermer les yeux pendant les nuits. Elle fait rien que des nuits blanches. Entre-temps, Avec l'arrivée de la pandémie de COVID-19, elle aussi, elle a précipité les personnes migrantes sans statut permanent dans une précarité de plus en plus profonde, tout en mettant en lumière et publiquement la place qu'elles occupent dans la société canadienne. Alors, ces personnes immigrantes sont des personnes essentielles à l'économie du développement du Canada. Malheureusement, elles n'ont pas traité comme on le veut. Elles sont traitées inhumaines. C'est pour cela que nous demandons au système de changer, de revoir sa politique de régularisation, de donner les papiers à tout le monde. Vous voyez, vu cela, on a décidé enfin de mener une marche vers Ottawa, afin que nous soyons tous écoutés, afin qu'on nous considère en tant que des humains, mais pas des ordures. Nous sommes des hommes avant tout. Nous avons droit à la vie comme les autres Canadiens. Nous avons droit à la régularisation. Voilà, c'est tout ce que moi je voulais vous dire. Nous souffrons et nous demandons qu'on nous régularise tous. Et merci beaucoup.
Thank you, Mamadou. If you were not able to get that full transcript, you're able to download it directly from your screen, or you can email us afterwards and we will send it to you. Next, we're going to hear from Queen Gabriel, who's an undocumented migrant health care worker whose humanitarian application was denied in October of 2020. Queen?
Good morning, everyone. My name is Queen Gabriel, and I am a private care worker. I worked as a care worker throughout the pandemic, taking care of Canada's most vulnerable. I even contracted COVID in April of 2021. I applied for a humanitarian and compassionate application and was unjustly denied in October of 2020. I want to explain to you the impact of this immigration system. The immigration system doesn't care that families are separated for years unending. This is what I have experienced, starting with separation from loved ones, sometimes not even getting closure by being able to attend the funeral of my dear departed. I lost my brother February last year, sudden death. It means having abusive employers with excessive exploitation and working up to 100 hours per week for little or no pay. Having potential partners who think they can hold you at ransom for fear of being discovered without status. Not being able to even register for any education institution without a SIN number. Whilst having your dream career dangled daily before you, feeling hopeless, it won't happen for you. There's no access to health care without charge. How can you afford to pay a health tab in the thousands when the minimum wage in Toronto is $14.25 and living expenses far outweighs your monthly income? And what if you have dependents? Some are not even being paid minimum wage when employers know that they don't have status. I was paid $1,000 a month for 400 hours of work every month for 2+ years. When I did get minimum wage from another employer, they refused to pay holiday pay, overtime, and vacation pay, even though they were well aware that they should be doing this. I'm still running an enormous debt from one usage of the emergency room, with monthly harassment and reminder calls from the credit bureau. There's no living without status in Canada. There's only existing. Doing dead-end jobs for survival and waiting with a ball and chain around your neck. Permanent residence for all should not be such a trying, nerve-wracking, daunting undertaking for anyone. Landed status for all is necessary, especially when the immigration process is slowly choking the life out of us, many of whom have died not being able to access simple health care during COVID, or even sick days for fear of unreasonable reprimand. Set us free, give us what we deserve, a non-biased decision of landed status where we can finally build homes and have basic human rights needs met without constant fear of retribution. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Next, we have Laura Lopez from Vancouver, who's a 35-year-old mother and a construction worker whose application was denied at the end of February. Laura?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah. Yeah, my name is Laura. I'm from Mexico. I'm here with my two little kids and my partner. We have been here in Canada for almost 7 years. And during that time, we have been trying different ways to stay legally here, but it's been really hard. It's been expensive. And we have found some people that they say they want to help, but they just took our money and make the things harder for us. We have been trying for different ways, as I say. I try to apply as a student. Then one of the person where my partner was working offered him to sponsor him. And we were waiting for this person to provide all these proofs that the lawyer asked for us. And at the end of the day, he said, no, he couldn't. And he took our time and we end up like with no status after all this. By that time, I got pregnant with my second baby, and things get harder because we didn't have any healthcare. We have no access for it, and we were trying to apply for things, but it was really expensive for us being no permanent residents or citizens. It's super expensive. And then we finally find out that we can apply for these humanitarian reasons, which it was really hard. We have to gather all these documents and proofs to show we are candidates to stay here. We are good people. And even though I'm a volunteer in different community centers, as well as my partner, we have settled here. We have many friends here. Our older daughter, she came here when she was really little. So she's been here for most of her life. She feels like Canada is home. She's been at school just here. She does speak Spanish as like us, but she has learned everything from school on English. So like when we were thinking, what if we have to go back to Mexico? She gets really scared. She wasn't feeling secure because she said, I don't feel comfortable going to school on Spanish. I don't really will understand everything. It's been really hard for all of us, not just for me and my partner, even for the little kids. This fear, when you don't know if you can stay here, you can think in a future in this country, or you have to go back and start from zero because we have been here for a while. We feel like we are not from here, not from there, and that for the kids is also very hard. We were like very positive about our application because the lawyers say we have many proofs. We were waiting just for a positive answer, and then on the last February, we got the answer, and they say they couldn't find enough reasons for us to stay here, even though it take me maybe like a year to gather all these papers, all these letters from people that we meet here. We have meet people here that we feel is our family now. Because it's like, you know, when you immigrate to a new place, everything is new, and we have created this community, and we feel like this is a safe place to our kids to grow. But it's been really hard for us to hear back from them that this is a negative answer. we feel like what's next, what we have to do. We have to go back to Mexico where the things are really bad right now. Speaking about everything, COVID situation, economic or insecure, it's been like a nightmare for us since we heard back from them.
Thank you,
Right now
Laura.
we are applying for this. We asked them to tell us what was the reason to say no, and we're still on the waiting for that. So
Okay. Thank
we
you.
hope everything comes positive this time, and we hope most of us can get a status because we feel like we deserve it.
Thank you, Laura. Next, we're going to hear from Devine Cruz, who's a 42-year-old single mom with 2 children, one of whom is here, who's a Canadian citizen and is 16 months old. Her humanitarian application was rejected in June of 2021. Devine?
Hi, good morning, everyone. My name is Divine Cruz, a caregiver and domestic worker for an elderly couple in Hong Kong and then later in Vancouver. They brought me here for 1 week, but for 1 week vacation in 2018, just like in Hong Kong. In Vancouver, I work 7 days a week, 12, sometimes 18 hours a day, including giving day massages. They stopped paying me when I arrived in Canada, except for $20 they gave me once, saying they will pay me except when we go back to Hong Kong. I reminded them about my visitor visa when it expired. They said it will be all right because we're going back to Hong Kong soon. When they said that the 2 children will be joining them in Vancouver, I realized had no plan of taking me back to Hong Kong. I felt trapped and I was very scared because I'm now illegal in Canada. And my employer didn't care. I left them with help of migrant worker and I submitted an application for permanent residence on humanitarian and compassionate grounds. I applied for a temporary residence permit 3 times, but all of them were refused, including my application for permanent residency because according to IRCC, he was not satisfied with the submitted documents. They denied my request for reconsideration. Finally, with a new lawyer with a strong support from my community on August 2021, I have federal court hearing to see if they will allow a new IRCC officer to review my case. This, I believe, in my last chance. I'm very afraid to go back to Philippines because my father was murdered and I got shot there. And it's very hard to find a job there. I left the Philippines for this reason and I know I found a job I can do and I want to do. But now I'm scared, not only for myself, but for my 18 months old baby. Without status, I do not have medical insurance. I cannot have a bill of any government services. I do not have any rights. And most importantly, I cannot earn living for myself and for my son. Because I'm not allowed to find a job. I know and I want to do. This experience gave me stress and anxiety and are very disempowering. My story is not unique and we, migrants, want a full and permanent immigration status for those who are here in Canada and those who are to come. The caregiving work is essential and permanent. We who do the work are essential and should stay in Canada permanently. If I had a permanent resident status, I can work for myself and for my baby. can live with my own place. I won't be dependent on others to alive and take care of myself and my baby. If we have a full permanent immigration status, we will have rights and we won't feel scared to exercise this right. Thank you.
Thank you, Divine. Next, we're going to hear from Lorley. Lorley is 45 years old and has worked in the Edmonton Public School Board as a custodian. She made a humanitarian compassionate application 3 times and was most recently rejected in April of 2021. Lorley, go ahead.
My name is Lorley. Yeah, I work in Edmonton Public School as a permanent custodian since 2017. And I came to Canada 2012. And I applied my first application under humanitarian and compassionate last 2016. And after 3 months, I got an open work permit, but I got the rejection 2018. And they called me 2000, by the way, they called me 2017 to apply for pre-removal assessment. And then I got the rejection on 2019. And then I applied again another application 2018, and I got a rejection 2020. And after that, I applied again for the 3rd time. So I get the rejection last January 2021. So because of my situation, I took to my principal at school, and I opened up about this matter. And then my principal and all the teachers, they did not hesitate to give me their support, because they said, as a custodian and essential worker during this time, is a big part. It's a big part for the safety of the kids. My work, what I'm doing in the Edmonton Public School. So since, by the way, since 2019, the CBSA took my passport, and I started to report to them every Tuesday by phone. So 2016, I got my open work permit, and since then until now, I have still my open work permit until this month, July 2019. But it's stressful for me, because anytime they can call me to go back home, because my open work permit doesn't have a status. So I'm worried about my daughter, because she's 7 years old, and she's already adopted life in Canada. So, and my place back home in Mindanao is not safe for her. They rejected my application for the reasons that they're not convinced that I can find work back home, and my daughter can adapt the situation in the Philippines. So I want status for all, because we've been here in Canada for so long time, and we adapted the situation and the way of life. And I see Canada is a peaceful place. People are very compassionate, and we can't deny that most of the people are dreaming to come to Canada, because Canada is one of the peaceful place. So I want status to end all the hardship and abuse to everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. And our last speaker before we're going to play a brief video is Lisel, who is speaking to us from Calgary. She's a 30-year-old mother to a 4-year-old daughter, and her application was refused on June 1st, 2021. Lisel, go ahead.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, everyone. My name is Lisel. I am 37 years old. I live in Alberta, and I am undocumented. I'm a single mother to a 4-year-old Canadian-born daughter. I came to Canada in 2014 as a temporary foreign worker, And because of the moratorium that time, I was unable to get a new work permit, so I ended up working under the table. I paid thousands of dollars to an immigration consultant, but still, all our application got denied. To make these matters even worse, my husband was sent back to Philippines because his work permit expired before mine. And so I had to deliver my child without him beside me. On December 2020, a lawyer helped me to apply a humanitarian and compassionate consideration. This is the only pathway that undocumented migrant like me can apply. We submitted all the documents and evidence that will help outweigh my grounds to get a positive result. I talk about the best interests of my child, the global pandemic that trapped us in more vulnerable situation, the hardships my daughter would face in all areas if she goes back to the Philippines, comparing her healthcare and education here and in the Philippines. In addition, the natural disaster that affected my hometown and my immediate family in 2020. I also talk about how I established my life here. In 4 months' time, the process was suspiciously fast. From the time I got notice from IRCC of received application to in process status, and in another 2 months, the decision was made. It was rejected again, even if I believe that I provided all the documents needed as evidence to support my application. I applied for ATIP or access to information privacy right after I got the result and have not yet received the written reason from the tribunal. It is very frustrating for every undocumented migrants like me. We did everything we could for the application, but still, we ended up denied. We spent thousands of dollars for the agency. Gathering of evidence and documents are overwhelming and stressful. We cannot live our life like others. We are not legally allowed to work while waiting years for this application. We cannot access healthcare. We live in constant fear of one day we might get deported. I'm speaking up not only for myself, but for all the migrants here struggling for years while waiting for their application to be approved. I'm supporting the Status for All campaign because I believe that is the only way that everyone can have equal rights. This is the only way that we can access basic services. I want to ask the help of individuals and the government. We believe that all migrants and undocumented people are essential. We are also contributors to the growth of Canadian economy and society. So please support us to get a full and permanent status. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Next, we're going to play a brief video from Marisol, who is unable to join us right now because of her work. And then we will move to question and answers. I did see that there was one question already about the exact data. So that is in the press release, as well as all the spellings that we've dropped in the chat, that you can download a 50-page PDF as well as a mini table. So next we'll listen to Marisol, and then we'll do question answers about the rest of them. Go ahead, Sarah.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Marisol Bobadilla, and I am a member of Migrante Canada based in Ontario. I came to Canada as a temporary foreign working permit in 2012. After 2 years and a half, I was called by a recruitment agency, which caused me to lose my status. I applied for a permanent resident through humanitarian and compassionate grounds for the best interest of my children. In the long wait and hope, I still refuse. I am like many of the thousands of migrant workers who left their hungry families in their own country like the Philippines, in exchange for working elsewhere to support them financially. Exhaustion, sleepless nights, and sadness are some of our experience as a migrant worker here in Canada. And our situation has worsened during the pandemic. We have been separated from families for a long time, experienced difficult challenges, and worsened health situation. Others were traumatized, while others did not survive. And this is all inhuman and unjust. It has been a year since we called the federal government to create immigration pathways that have resulted in status for some. But most of the working class, especially the undocumented workers, have been neglected and not included in permanent status. Each one of us experienced hardship and sacrifice. During the pandemic, migrant workers are on the front lines providing service in this country. While most Canadians seek safety in their homes, migrant workers and laborers continue to struggle in the farms, delivering food and essential goods, caring for the children, cleaning and maintaining houses, and other infrastructure that has kept of all us alive. And through our sweat and blood, we keep the Canadian economy survive. We choose to work in Canada under the assumption that this government has good migrant policies. We thought that you have sympathy and concern for every migrant workers. Where is your promises? Where is your sympathy? That's why today we demand the government of Canada and ask Prime Minister Trudeau to keep your promise. We are also a human being with a family. If you are true to your promise, you will not hesitate to give the full protection we all demand. Status for every migrant worker. Status for everybody. Status for undocumented. Status for all. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Thank you everyone for your patience and for being present here and to listen to this and to listen to these crucial voices calling for full and permanent immigration status for all. What we are seeing and what we're revealing today is that there is systematic rejection for humanitarian compassionate applications, where rejections have doubled between 2019 and the first quarter of 2021. At the same time, as we all know, the humanitarian compassionate application is broken. It is barely accessible to a very minor percentage of the 500,000 people in the country without permanent resident status. And so we're calling on the federal government to ensure full and permanent immigration status for all migrant and undocumented people in the country, and full and permanent immigration status on arrival for all migrants in the future, so that we do not have these, so that we do not see a replication of the crisis that we are seeing today. So we are now going to turn to question and answers, and wherever possible, in the interest of time, I'm going to try to direct questions to try to answer questions immediately and or direct them to an individual one of the members who's just spoken. So I see now that we have the Philippine Reporter, CTV, Toronto Star, Le Devoir, perhaps a few other channels who have asked us for individual photographs of the migrants. So while we will endeavor to do that as soon as possible and email them to you, we will also email you a recording of this presentation so you can take screenshots, because we may not be able to get all those photos in time as people are working, but we have some and we will send the rest. So I hope that responds to sort of all of the photo requests. I see more people even asking. Okay. So having said that, I just want to go through the questions. So the first set of questions is from Palak Mangat. I am so sorry for mispronouncing your name. So the questions are, can you share how MRN got hold of these figures from Immigration, Refugee, Citizenship Canada? Can you elaborate on why you think this is a secretive policy? What have you heard from IRCC to explain these numbers? Could it be looking to boost acceptance under other streams? So to reiterate, and Saram's going to drop the names of all the speakers and the press release again. All of the data that we have is now in the in our press release, so you can access it, look at it yourself. But we received this data through an order paper that NDP Member of Parliament Jenny Kwan did, because it is very difficult otherwise to get information in the country. So she received it as part of a host of documents from Parliament last month, I believe, or sorry, in May. For us, it's not a question of, we don't know why this is happening. How is it that numbers dropped so significantly between 2019 and 2020? And it cannot be because of COVID, because this isn't that there has been processing delays, their actual rejection rates have increased. It is also not a question of an explanation from IRCC, because IRCC always insists that these are individual applications. But what we're showing is that there is clearly some sort of a systematic change that is happening. And finally, what we're really calling for is full and permanent immigration status for all. And while we hope that there is a boost in other streams, unfortunately, most of those streams are inaccessible to migrant, particularly to non-status and undocumented people. So next, I am going to move to some of the other questions. Also, we have McDonald Scott, who's an immigration consultant. He's who can respond to some specific legal questions. I see that he may have responded to some already in the Q&A, but we will try to also redirect to him if we need to. But let's keep going. So we have now all right, who's next? Apologies. Maybe what we'll do is, Palak, we'll unmute you to see if you have any follow-up questions, and then we can continue to unmute some of the other participants, other speakers, so we will bring them in one at a time. So Paul, I'm just going to unmute you to see if you have any follow-up questions.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yes, go ahead.
Hi, yeah, sorry, I just wanted to allow, I'm hoping you can elaborate. So you're saying that because you made a point that these are not processing delays and they're actually rejection rates. So that leads you to believe, or that sort of convinces you that there is something bigger going on here. And that's sort of what sort of sparked you here. I'm just hoping you can connect the dots there for me.
Absolutely. So the key point that we're making is we don't know what's happening, right? We don't know why it's happening. There has been no policy change, no public announcement, no change in legal cases, but agency rejections have increased. So it's on the federal government to explain it. However, and at the same time, whether it's a secretive policy change or some individual officers have sort of chosen to, we don't know what's happened, but we can see that this is systematic because the numbers are so stark and it's so historic and it's so sudden, but also that it's unfair because it excludes people's ability to get rights, because that's what permanent residence provides. At the same time, we're also saying that the agency process in and by itself, even if the rejection rates hadn't been halved, at a time when Canada desperately needs immigrants, the Prime Minister Trudeau has been saying, we're going to be taking migrants in the country. All the programs they've been creating have shut out undocumented people. Now we see that the only program that does exist for undocumented people is rejecting people at historic rates. So what's happening? And because we know that because we know that permanent resident status is the only way for migrants to have the equal rights as everybody else, we're calling for all migrants in the country to be regularized and be given permanent resident status. I hope that answers that. Okay, so next we will unmute Rafi, and Rafi, you can ask your question. Just give me 1 second. If you have other questions, please put them in the Q&A and we will respond. Go ahead, Rafi, you can unmute yourself and speak.
Thank you. I think you kind of already answered my question because it was a form of it was asked by another journalist. So maybe I'll just focus on the latter part. I'm sure everyone who is doing this story today, we're all going to go to Immigration Canada and ask for explanations. And I wonder if they do turn around and tell us that, it was due to the pandemic and they are going to increase numbers again, would that answer be satisfactory to you in any way? And I'm kind of just basing this on what they told us when we did stories about citizenship test delays.
Mm-hmm. So I think I can give you a sense of what they'll say. So they might say that it's because of COVID-19, and that simply cannot be the case, because we're not talking about fewer applications processed. We're actually saying the rate of rejection has increased. So if you look at the table that is in the press release, you can see the numbers of people that are being rejected is, increasing just by itself. And higher than previous, the numbers of people who are being accepted is decreasing. It's not just percentages, total numbers are changing. So had there been a COVID-19 related delay, then the rate of rejection would not have increased. The rate of acceptance would have increased. Does that make sense? Right? Because the total number of applications that are being processed in these years are the same as previous years. That's not the issue. What we're going to hear from the federal government potentially is also to say that, look, we have created all of these other programs. So it's very important to note that the recently announced TR to PR program leaves out all undocumented residents. The recently announced healthcare worker program leaves out the majority of undocumented people. The only way you can access it is if you at one point made a refugee claim, currently are working in healthcare, had a work permit, which is a very, very few number of people, and you have to pass all of these other things. There has been the announcement now a couple of years ago, but it's only just starting to get off the ground, of a regularization program for just undocumented construction workers in the Toronto area, which is only 500 spots, which again is very small, very piecemeal, it's very restrictive. And the central issue is this: without permanent resident status, you cannot access rights. The most recently announced parliamentary committee report, Immigration, Citizenship and Immigration Committee report said that. There were regulations that were recently announced said it. The Minister of Employment has said it. The Prime Minister has alluded to it. You don't have power if you don't have PR. It's as simple as that. And if 1.6 million people in the country, 1 in 23 residents are excluded from basic rights and protections, then none of us are protected. So I hope that responds to that. Okay. Next. We have a question from somebody, from Teresa Redula from Omni Television in Filipino. She would like to ask a question from the speakers from the Philippines. Just gonna ask if there are any Filipino speakers who are interested in answering any questions. I'm looking at Laselle, Divine. Would you be willing to answer a question if asked, Divine, Laselle? I don't see Lorley right now. Not getting any nods from our people, but I'm not sure. Teresa, why don't we unmute you? You can ask your question, then we can see if people can. Yeah, if you could just speak and ask your question, we'll see if somebody is able to respond at that time. They may become more easier once you've asked. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you for taking my question. I have a question for Divine, Cruz, Lorley, and Lysel. If anyone can answer me in Tagalog language, ano po yung nararamdaman nyo matapos magtrabaho dito sa Canada? Naka-adapt na po kayo and yung mga children nyo sa school systems dito. Ano po yung nararamdaman nyo nang hindi tinanggap ng Immigration Canada yung applications nyo po?
Sobra akong na-stress at saka naawa din ako sa baby ko. And then, kasi akala ko dito sa Canada is yung humanity is nandito, pero nung time na na-refuse yung sa HNC ko, parang nagkaroon ako ng sakit sa loob at sobrang stress kasi syempre parang ito na lang yung hope ko na makapag-stay dito sa Canada kasi hindi ko naman kasalanan na biktima ako ng human trafficking at saka hindi ko ginusto na nandito ako. Pero alam mo yun, napakahirap sa amin na undocumented tapos may baby na hindi mo makuha yung services na sana makuha mo para sa sarili mo at saka sa anak mo as a single mom.
Hello.
Thank you. Oh, go ahead, Laselle.
Syed, could you also put it on speaker view, please?
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Sorry, Laselle, go ahead.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, para sa akin po, pagkatapos kong masubmit lahat ng documents para sa humanitarian, umasa ako kasi hindi pa nakikita ng 4 na taon kong anak yung kanyang tatay. Kasi umuwi siya sa Pilipinas nang buntis ako at napakahirap para sa akin na mamuhay dito ng kami lang ng anak ko. At akala ko yun na yung pagkakataon na makikita ng anak ko yung kanyang ama, magkakasama na sila dito, pero in the end, na-denied pa rin yung application ko for HNC. So, very frustrating at napakahirap para sa akin. Salamat.
Thank you. Next, we have a question from Canadian Press. So we will turn to them. We'll just unmute you in 1 second. Sorry.
Hi.
Can you unmute?
Can you hear me?
Clara? Yes, go ahead.
Yes. Hi, I just wanted to know, can you repeat where and how you got the statistics? This was fast and...
Absolutely. So we received the statistics through an order paper request by NDP immigration opposition critic Jenny Kwan in May of this year as part of a broader set of documents, that data that she was able to access.
Thank you.
Okay. Next, we have Naomi Gelper. I know that your question was responded in chat via text from Mac, but if you have any more questions, please, if you have any follow-up, please go ahead.
I don't have any follow-ups. Thank you so much. Everything was answered for me.
All right, thank you. Next, we have a question from Veronica Kusi, from the Philippines Reporter. Veronica, I will just unmute you. Go ahead.
Hi, good morning. Thanks for this opportunity. I think I have a follow-up question with Mac Scott. It's regarding the process. Like, from what I understand, for HNC applications, there's really no criteria for determining who gets to apply and what are the, precisely the criteria. And then even for the evidence that they have submitted, I don't think there's like clear-cut definition of what kind of evidence they might be submitting. So, it's really based on trial and error, maybe. That's why some have applied 3 times and still they got rejected. And then from what I understand, please correct me if I'm wrong, HNC decisions are based on the discretion of the IRCC officer. But from what I understand also, the IRCC minister, Minister Mendocino, can just by his own choice can say yes or no to these applications. Please enlighten me a little bit, Mac.
Sure. I mean, it is extremely discretionary. However, there is a clear test that was set by the Supreme Court in the case Kantasamy, which is that they need to be looking at considerations that would excite the desire of a reasonable person to alleviate the misfortune of another. What we've been seeing in the decisions that we're getting recently during this period of a lot of denials is that they're using the language of compelling reasons. Well, the Supreme Court said nothing in Kantasamy about compelling reasons. It's another reason why we believe there may have been some kind of underground policy, at least at certain processing centers, to change the test in terms of the cost, this is going to result and has resulted in a lot of litigation, which costs the government quite a bit of money. In the end, it is up to an individual officer. You're right. It's very discretionary. There are some very broad guidelines on the Immigration, Refugee, Citizenship Canada website about evidence. I've actually had the luck of winning applications that were denied before, which seems very odd. Yeah, it's very discretionary. You get the right officer, or in this case, even the right processing center, and you win, and you go to the wrong office and you lose. There is a group of 4 construction workers, farm workers, that had basically the same story. 3 were processed in Vancouver and turned down, and 1 was processed in Niagara Falls and was accepted for basically the same grounds. It's extraordinarily arbitrary. And, you know, there's not a lot of recourse. There's no hearing. They don't even give you reasons for their decision unless you ask for them or get the court to ask for them. It's extraordinarily arbitrary. And for this to be the only path to permanent residency is frankly ridiculous.
Thank you, Mac. It seems we are at the end of the questions, so we will be wrapping up for the day, unless somebody wants to slip in a very last question. We are also at the hour, so I want to just be mindful of that. So in closing, we are talking about, apologies. So in closing, we have learned that in 2020, the rejection rate, sorry, in 2021, the rejection rates increased twice as much as they were in 2019. The acceptance rates have dropped. There is clearly something going on. And what we're seeing is that there is a real human cost. Double the rejection is double the exploitation. And therefore, we are calling on Prime Minister Justin Trudeau to do the right thing and ensure full and permanent immigration status for all. We will be taking action for the rest of the year. So I'm going to invite Samira, who's with Solidarity Cross Borders in Montreal, who will share some words about an upcoming action that we are announcing nationally for the first time to support this call to give full and permanent immigration status to everyone. Samira, go ahead.
Bonjour à tous. Alors, nous allons à Ottawa pour demander le statut pour tous et toutes. Nous commencerons par une grande manifestation à Montréal le 18. Nous aurons ensuite une semaine d'action avant de nous rendre à Ottawa pour exprimer nos revendications. Le 25 juillet, les sans-papiers du Québec et leurs alliés se réuniront à Hall, Parc Francophonie à midi, et marcheront vers Ottawa pour rencontrer d'autres migrants vivant dans diverses régions de l'Ontario à 14 heures au Parc Majors Hill, Coin Murray et Mackenzie. Nous passerons ensuite au bureau du Premier ministre pour demander un programme compréhensif de régularisation pour tous. Nous allons présenter une demande humanitaire symbolique pour toutes les personnes avec un statut précaire au Canada, des personnes sans papier, des réfugiés, des étudiants et étudiantes étrangères, des aides familiaux, des travailleurs agricoles, car assez, c'est assez. Le système du cas par cas nous fait tous violence. Nous avons besoin d'un vrai programme de régularisation pour tout le monde. Merci.
Apologies. Thank you. So Samira just announced that there is going to be a massive demonstration that will be starting first in Montreal on July 18th, followed with a week of actions from July 18th to the 24th. And then on July 25th, migrants from Montreal, Ontario, across Ontario, even other parts of the country, will be arriving in Ottawa to march onto the Prime Minister's office. That's July 25th, calling for full and permanent immigration status for everyone. So we will be sending you more media updates, but we wanted to make sure that this call for regularization, that undocumented people, as well as farm workers, care workers, students, refugees, all migrants must get status is continuing, and we have an upcoming action. I see that Sarah Champagne has a last question. So Sarah, yes, go ahead. We will just unmute you now. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm so sorry.
No, it's okay. Please go ahead.
My hand. I was just wondering, I was coming through the 50-page data that you have. I was wondering if you could point out any specific country that has a higher rejection rate. I heard you say it was mostly from, was it low wage, poor countries of origin? Can you say a word about that?
Absolutely. So we are seeing that it is primarily racialized people, but also people in low wage occupation, working class people, as you can see from the speakers. These are the people who are being rejected. These are the people who have lived here for decades, sometimes even engaged in essential work, who are being turned down. At the same time as Canada has a historic shortfall of permanent residents. You know, in 2020, we saw half the number of permanent residents than Canada has in previous years. There is a historic opportunity right now to ensure that people who live here, who work here, who support our families and our communities be given permanent resident status. So in terms of the specifics around country of origin, we couldn't see a clear pattern, but other than the fact that it is primarily racialized people who are being rejected, which is what we see in our own work. You know, today you heard from people from Toronto, Montreal, Edmonton, Calgary, and Vancouver. This is a national issue, and this is just 7 of so many of our members who are facing this. The same issue that we're seeing with farm workers, care workers, international students, refugees, and now again to show, of course, the people in the most precarious situations being undocumented people facing the same crisis. So I hope that is all for the day. If you have any follow-up questions, my contact is also in the press release, and we will be staying in touch with all of you. We'll be emailing you a video of this of this press conference in case you can get, in case you need screenshots from it, if you're not able to get everyone's photographs. Thank you everyone for being here. We look forward to you shedding light on this crucial issue and encouraging Prime Minister Trudeau to do the right thing, to do what he has promised, and to ensure status for all. Thank you, everyone.